Hey everybody, Austin back again with another long play video. This time it's going to be Lords of Thunder on the Sega CD. Now, I actually was originally planning on doing a Let's Play on this as opposed to a long play, but these last few days I've actually been a little under the weather, and you might actually be able to hear it in my voice. I'm still kind of trying to recover. But in the past I actually did a live Let's Play on the PC Engine, or I'm sorry, the Turbo Duo version of this game. Which is actually a good bit different in some ways, and not so different in other ways. But the sort of main story is going to kick in here. I'm going to go ahead and just cut out my voice track for a second and let you guys hear that so you can kind of understand what the story is in the game. Not that it's really all that important, but yeah.
The once peaceful land of Mistral was about to be plunged into a time of death and turmoil. From the darkest reaches of the land, the army of the Garuda Empire, under the command of High Priest Sornbel and the 6 Stark generals, had begun the invasion of Mistral. Not since the Battle of the Gods during the time of the Sword had the beautiful countries of Mistral seen such savage destruction. In this battle, the legendary knight Drac with the goddess Luxina had sealed the evil god Deoric deep under the 6 continents of Mistral. The Garuda Empire's intention was to resurrect the evil god Deoric and to plunge the world into darkness. The people of Mistral fought to stop the invasion, but they were no match against the superior force of the Garuda Empire. As the last hope of the people of Mistral, one knight alone stands to save this land. His name was Duran, the last in the bloodline of the legendary knight Drac. Protected by the mystical armor of Drac, Duran alone confronts Sornbel and the Garuda Empire. Will Duran be able to stop the Garuda Empire, the resurrection of Deoric?
So there you go, guys. That was the story, and for those of you guys that have not played this game, you just got a taste of the excellent heavy metal soundtrack in this game. If you're into metal, this definitely has one of the absolute best metal soundtracks out of any game, period. It holds up great today. So we're going to be playing it on Super, which is the hardest mode in the game. And for those of you guys that might have saw my Let's Play on this game, trust me in that the Sega CD version is far easier than the PC Engine Duo or the Turbo Duo version, and I'll explain that in a little bit. Here's the stage select screen. One of the coolest features of this game is you can basically play any of the first 6 main stages in any order. Likewise, you have 4 main types of firepower, which are these pieces of armor here, and they actually have 3 levels of firepower on their own as well, which you'll see. And so that gives even more variety. You can basically pick and choose any sort of base weaponry that you want and just tackle the whole game with it. Pretty cool stuff. And again, to mix things up even more, you've got a little bit of a shop here. Although in the Sega CD version, I don't want to say it's broken, but it does make things pretty easy because you pick up a lot of money along the way. You've got a health meter, which is the bottom bar at the top right-hand corner of the screen, and then you've got a power meter as well, which is for your your weapons. And then you've also got shields. You can do shield max, which I think gives you 3 free hits before you start actually taking damage. And then you can buy like your panic bombs and elixir, which will actually revive you if you die. So you, instead of getting the game over, you actually just revive on the spot. And then you can buy extra continues, which, well, if you're half decent at shooters, you probably won't actually need in this version of the game. So, yeah, Lords of Thunder. You know, you guys, you know, this was actually one of those Sega CD games I actually got back in the mid-90s after I got my system. Back then, you could get a lot of great games really cheap, especially on platforms like the Sega CD. The Sega CD was actually a great platform for budget gamers, and that was definitely me, because when I got my system, I was in 7th grade, and I spent a lot of 8th grade, especially 7th and 8th grade, buying games for it. And, you know, most of the games I got were maybe $10, brand new at places like Toys R Us. You gotta think that when I got my Sega CD, I think it was 95 or 96 when I got it. So it was being discounted, it was pretty cheap. I think my parents got it for me at Funko Land. I talked them into getting me the Sega CD because I think it was only like 30 or 40 bucks. You know, this is like right as Sega was discontinuing it, or just right about to discontinue it completely. So the systems were really cheap, and the games at places like Toys R Us, again, you can get super cheap. And this is actually when Best Buy still carried Sega CD games as well. So I got games like Lords of Thunder, Android Assault is another one I got back then for a whopping $10 brand new sealed back then. And I got a lot of my Sega CD games like that. Of all the Sega CD games I got though, especially for that price, I'd have to say between Android Assault and Lords of Thunder, those were the absolute best deals I got, because they're still today some of my absolute favorite Sega CD games, especially Lords of Thunder. And in Lords of Thunder's case, a part of that is the awesome soundtrack. Now, this game's actually based on the Turbo Duo version, which came out 2 years prior in America and Japan. I believe that was 1993 when that one came out. And, you know, this version has a couple of enhancements. It also has quite a few drawbacks that you didn't find in the Turbo Duo version. In some cases, I think there are some backgrounds missing in this version. I think there's even supposed to be like water here. I don't even remember. It's been a while since I played the Duo version. But yeah, quite a few things that are actually inferior in this version. But one thing, in my opinion, that is far superior to the Duo version, and one of the reasons why I still thoroughly enjoy this version, even though it's kind of inferior in some other areas, is the music. The music is... it's better produced in this version. It's got a thicker sound. It's not as hollow. And the arrangements are actually a little bit different. So they actually completely re-recorded the music from the ground up. I don't even know if it was different musicians or the same guys, but overall the production, I think, is way better than the Turbo Duo version. And it lends itself, or at least it lends the music to hold up even better than the Turbo Duo version, which is awesome. Really good stuff. I mean, just about every track in this game is amazing. It's got a phenomenal soundtrack. If you're a fan of metal, even if you're not a fan of metal, some of the tunes might actually sort of, you know, kind of click with you, because it's lots of good melodies and things like that. And it's not like hardcore metal or anything like that. It's just good, straight metal, you know, simple beats for the most part. So, I mean, even non-traditional metal fans might enjoy the music. And, you know, this game was actually kind of one of those, I don't know how to explain it. It was in my formative years of listening to music. Before I actually started buying my own music CDs, I listened to the music off games on my Sega CD, like Lords of Thunder, Android Assault, Batman Returns in the Sega CD, that had some metal in it. So Lords of Thunder was actually kind of had a big influence on me in terms of my taste in music. I eventually started buying actual metal CDs. You know, the traditional stuff that a lot of high schoolers get into first, like Metallica, Megadeth, and Iron Maiden, things like that. But I think Lords of Thunder was kind of partially to thank for that. It came before any of those. So, really great stuff, and it's still a phenomenal soundtrack. So yeah, we're already on the second level, and I typically like to start off with that last level we played. It's not a very difficult stage. It's kind of a way to ease you in, even though I was kind of getting, I don't know, playing stupid and getting hit towards the end. But it's definitely a good way to ease you in. It's not a very difficult stage. There's a lot of money around, especially in that water/bubble section. This is also a good level to start on. I used to start on this level all the time, and then I eventually made my way over to the water stage because that just seemed a little more friendly in terms of you know, where to start out at. Because when you start the game, you actually have to start basically from scratch. You get a very little amount of money, and so you're not fully powered up when you play your first stage. But after you complete your full stage, you should be able to make yourself nearly fully powered up. You should at least be able to have 3 bombs, full life, and full power gauge, and then maybe a shield. After the second level, you should be able to pretty much max out everything. And if you don't get hit, you should have a lot of extra money left over, and you should be able to be completely maxed out by the second or third level. But again, that's kind of dependent on how well you actually play, because if you get hit a lot, well, you've got to spend money to get your life back. Or you can play it risky, and that's actually something I want to try sometime soon, and I never really thought about until doing this playthrough, is trying to go through the game without actually buying anything from the shop. That would be a nice little challenge, and I think it would actually make the game a little more interesting, because again, it is actually a lot easier than the Turbo Duo version. It's actually way easier. At least on the hardest skill mode, it's way easier. A reason for that, guys, is that in the Turbo Duo version, if you put on the hardest mode in the game, just about every enemy in the game basically leaves what are called suicide bullets. And now suicide bullets, they're very common in modern shooters, cave shoot-em-ups especially, the bullet hells and whatnot. On the hardest modes, they'll oftentimes have suicide bullets. But that's what happens in the Turbo Duo Lords of Thunder. So all of these small guys that I just killed, they would be spawning more bullets when I killed them. Like right here, were super tough. You would have had an extra 15 bullets coming at you on top of what they've already shot out. So if you actually want to sort of get a taste for that, or a taste of that, I do have my Lords of Thunder Let's Play for the Turbo Duo I did several months back and got my ass handed at. I think about a half an hour in, I think I rage quit. It was so tough. I sort of underestimated the difficulty of the game. Even though I had played it a lot, it had been a while since I played it when I did that video. But yeah, as you can see here, I'm just kind of like crushing everything. I'm just blowing through everything that's coming my way. And yeah, Sega CD version, much easier. And it's actually so much easier in this playthrough, I beat the game without dying. And now that I think about it, I don't know if I've ever done that. I think I have in the past, but you know, it's been a while since I really played this game, like, frequently. So I played it a ton back in the day, though, back in the 90s. But ever since then, it's been kind of one of those on and off things. Play it once or twice every couple years. So I don't remember if I ever beat it without dying, though. But this playthrough I did.
May I help you?
Now, one little difference is in the Turbo Duo version, I don't think that lady actually speaks. And so that was kind of a cool little addition in the Sega CD version. As far as other sound differences, the Turbo Duo actually, that version has basically pretty different sound effects as far as I remember. Although I think they are a little more pronounced. In this game, I think there's, I don't know what's going on, but a lot of times you won't actually hear the sound effects because there's so much going on. And the sound effects are a little, I guess, subdued in this version compared to the Turbo Duo version. I do definitely like picking the sound for picking up the crystals better in this version. It's a much cleaner sound, which is nice, but some of the other sounds are actually a little bit better in the Duo version. One other thing that's different in that one is enemies will blink when you hit them, so that's always a feature I've liked in games, and it kind of gives a game a little more of an arcade kind of vibe. And That's missing in this version. I don't think not a single enemy in this blinks when you hit them. So when you hit an enemy accurately and you actually connect with an enemy, in this version it makes a specific kind of low thunking noise, and it's hard to describe, but as you see me hitting big bosses or something like that, you'll kind of be able to hear the sound. So that's how you know you're actually doing damage to an enemy in this game. But it's, yeah, not quite as obvious as an enemy blinking or something like that. So I wish they kind of retained that, but I don't know if they were rushed when they did this port, or if they were just like, they just didn't give a shit because they were, they were like, it's the Mega CDs. In Japan, the Mega CD was less popular than the PC Engine CD. It was like way less popular actually, and the Sega CD was more popular in America as opposed to the Turbo Duo and TurboGrafx CD. But the Sega CD wasn't doing amazing over here. It sold a couple million units, but it wasn't selling like the Sega Genesis or Super Nintendo were. So I mean, I don't know, maybe halfway through development they're like, yeah, you know what, who cares? No one's gonna buy it anyway. And no one did. Because Lords of Thunder is actually, it's a somewhat uncommon game. It's not, I don't think it's super rare, but it does command a decent price nowadays. Again, flashback time, I paid $10 for it. Brand new sealed at Toys R Us back in the 90s. And now it's a $50 to $60 to $70 game complete, used. So every boss in this game has a very specific pattern. This guy, what happens is he goes into this ball form where he bounces around quite a bit. And then once he solidifies, he has two attacks. One is he shoots bullets in all directions, and you can actually sit right on top of him. Or not right on top, preferably he'd be a little bit lower in the screen. You can sit kind of center with him, but above. And the bullets will, just like that, the bullets will avoid you, and or you'll avoid the bullets. I can't even talk straight. But then he also throws out his arm, and bullets just shoot straight up. And if you just get past him, you won't get hit by those either. So, but he usually does the all directions bullet pattern after he throws his arm out. So, what you want to do is get behind him, so you dodge his first attack, and then get directly above him right afterwards, so you can dodge his second attack. So. Every boss in this game has very specific patterns like that for the most part. Some bosses are a little bit trickier than others, like the first boss I fought on the water stage. She is pretty tough, pretty tricky. Likewise, I guess most other bosses after this are pretty straightforward though, once you figure out the pattern. And I have figured out the patterns pretty decently, so I mean for the most part I think I avoid the boss's bullets and whatnot. I don't have too many problems. There are a couple points where I get pretty sloppy, and I'm just like, whatever, I'm just gonna use some bombs because it's better to just use a bomb rather than get hit, because bombs are only 100 crystals, and refilling your life is like, I don't know, I think the max one is like 600 or 800 crystals, so it's like, should I get hit and have to refill my life for 600 or 800? Or should I just use 3 bombs and spend 300 and get my bombs back? It's that sort of thing. So, there's actually a good incentive to use your bombs, and use your bombs a lot in this game because they're so cheap to get back. I mean, it's like no risk involved. So, yeah. Now this is actually my favorite weapon in the game. It's basically the water weapon. It's actually not ideal for this level. The flamethrower or the electrical armor is the best for this level. Primarily because their attacks go through solid objects, where the blue firepower actually does not. And you're going to see that, a result of that, actually in this next section coming up. And I actually get hit quite a bit here because the blue shot doesn't go through the solid objects. It goes through some walls, like you can see the ceiling and the floor, it's actually going through those. But every time it hits an enemy, it stops. So it doesn't help really with the swarm of big enemies. There's a lot of enemies here that take a few hits. They're not the little popcorn enemies for the most part. So if it was all just popcorn enemies, it would be a little bit different. But see, I'm having a hard time now. So I start using my bombs. Now, if you were using the electrical armor or the lightning armor, whatever you want to call it, all those shots would be going through all these solid objects here. Whereas you could see the blue firepower is not. So that's making it a little bit trickier for me right here. So, and the flame would also go through it as well. So at least the level 2 and level 3. Man, I always get hit there. I should probably try to not do what I did there. So yeah, I mean, this game definitely still gets a little tricky, especially in that final stage, which you're going to see later on in the video. But imagine doing all this with suicide bullets coming at you. Basically twice as many bullets. It makes it really hard to dodge. So, yeah. The Turbo Duo version is way more difficult. And I'm kind of stubborn when it comes to Lords of Thunder. Even when I had the Turbo Duo version, I would always play it on the hardest mode. Even though I could never get that far on the hardest mode because of the suicide bullets, I'd have to continue and all that. I would refuse to put it down to an easier skill mode because I can basically rock the Sega CD version on the hardest mode. I'm stupid like that. So, if I ever get the Duo version again, or make a copy or something and play it in emulation, I'm gonna make myself tone down the difficulty a little bit. Maybe leave it on hard and see how I can do there. But those suicide bullets, they will kill you in the Duo version. They make it really tough. So in a way, despite Sega CD version having some drawbacks in the visual department, it might actually be the more welcoming version for some of you guys to play. Because you can still crank it up to the hardest mode and it's still a little more accessible than the Duo version is. It's not nearly as challenging. So we're actually over halfway through the game now, and yeah, Lords of Thunder is not a terribly long game. It's a decent length actually for a shoot 'em up of this time period. It's about 40 minutes long if you don't die and you don't continue and whatnot. If you do continue, you have to obviously start the level over from the beginning, and I think you're basically left with whatever money you had. I think that's how it works. I don't remember. It's been a little while since I've actually had to continue in this version. So I think you're left after you continue with whatever money you had left off. So, you know, you can get some powers back and try it again, but there might be a situation where you've basically lost most of your money, so it's kind of like starting from scratch, like a brand new game, sort of, but continuing instead. So, but this is actually my favorite weapon to use on this stage, and then the next stage I'm going to use this weapon again as well. It's actually my new favorite weapon to use on the last stage we're going to be going to. And I'll talk a little more about that once we actually get there. But as you can see, there's not a ton of huge enemies right now. If there are, it's just like one or two here and there. So, I mean, there's no huge risk. And if you'll notice, I've actually been using my sword quite a bit in this playthrough. Not as much as I used to back in the day. But the sword is actually more powerful in this version than it is in the Turbo Duo one. So that's another sort of factor that makes this version a little bit easier. So if you have big enemies like that guy that just popped out of the ceiling, just get up front to, get in front of him, just use your sword and just wail away, and you should be able to take them down pretty quickly. And I actually like that. That was actually one thing that bugged me when I finally did play the Turbo Duo version, because this was actually the first version of Lords of Thunder I played back in the day. So it was the one I was familiar with, right? And, you know, you got this big sword that comes out, and you know, I figured in the Duo version it would do a lot of damage too, but it actually doesn't. It's kind of weak, and so in that version you're better off just shooting things from a distance. But I like how they sort of made it a little more powerful in this one. Now, actually, as a result of the sword being kind of overpowered, it does give this game some balance issues. Balance issues that don't really bother me too much, just because the game is still so much fun to play. I mean, great music, good graphics, fun gameplay. You know, it's all there. So, you know, you'll see at the end of the game, I pretty much wreck through the last boss faster than I do just about any other boss in the game, mostly because of the sword. And the sword is, again, kind of overpowered. But, you know, I don't let that bother me. I'm not going to nitpick about it because everything else in the game is so good. It's just, the game is a ton of fun to play no matter what. So this boss here, and I do something stupid here, I just sit on him, sort of tanking my way as he walks back. You have to shoot him in his mouth. Right underneath his little sword thing, and not too difficult once you get that pattern down. He actually was a boss that would give me a lot of trouble back in the day. So now, what I actually used to do on this level was I used to use the fire armor, and I don't know why I always use the fire armor, because I chose the blue armor the other night, and I was like, why didn't I ever use the fire armor on this stage? And you're gonna see why. Every stage in this game has a lot of enemies coming from all sides, but this level has sort of, I don't know, it just feels like it has more enemies coming from behind you than other stages do. Maybe it's just sort of an illusion, and it's like a perceptual thing for me, but to me it seems like more enemies come from behind you in this one. But also a lot of enemies come out pretty fast from the front as well. And so, you know, with the fire, when you're maxed out, we're actually pretty much, well, no matter which level you're at, actually, no level of the, you know, the fire armor shoots behind you. So you're actually really limited when it comes to those guys behind you. And again, that's actually, if you want a greater challenge, you can pick those sets of armor that aren't as beneficial on certain stages. Which is actually, you know, could definitely give this game a little bit of replay value. But in terms of surviving and trying to make it through the game easier, this is definitely the armor you want to pick for this stage, just because multi-directional firepower, it's great. So, and remember, this stage, actually, I would always pick last back in the day because it would give me the hardest time. And, well, stupid me, I was always using the fire armor, or even the, you know, the wind armor, or whatever. When I could have just been using the water armor. And, you know, getting through the stage a lot easier. I mean, I'm not having any problems. I maybe gotten hit once, twice, I just got hit there. So my shield is completely gone now. And I just got a life up, and I have no need for it. That's how well I'm doing. So, yeah, you're starting to see some decent bullets come out now. But imagine in the Turbo Duo version there being like 3 times the amount of those bullets. So I mean, that's really how much more difficult that version is. And I know I'm kind of sounding like a broken record now, but man, that version it's tricky. And again, if you want to see that in action, there's plenty of long plays of that out there, I'm sure, on Super, and there's like super plays and whatnot. But if you want to check out my video, I've got a Let's Play on it. You can just search for the video on my channel, or just go to my Let's Plays playlist and you'll find it. And we're almost near the boss. This is the last stretch. And you know what's great about this game, regardless of which version you play, is there's just so much variety in the stage designs. Like now you've got these big guys falling from the sky, and you've got a castle in the background. It's just not something you would have expected to just breezing through that earlier part of the level with just the fast scrolling background. And I like how the game will actually speed up and slow down like that. That's pretty cool. And that's not something you really saw. And too many shooters back in the day, actually. Shooters would typically have the same speed through and through. You know, either you'd be on a fast stage or you'd be on a slow stage, and it wouldn't really mix up in the same level without switching screens or something like that. So, really good stuff. Gotta love the scrolling on the sky as well, just on this boss fight. Really nice stuff. Again, the Turbo Duo version is actually superior in a lot of these regards, but the game... People will really knock this version, but the reality is, this is still a fantastic game. The Duo version, I think, is the ideal one to play, but again, I actually prefer this one in some regards. Maybe that's nostalgia talking, but yeah, it's still a great version regardless. And probably actually the more accessible of the two versions, because Turbo Duos, they are... they are not cheap. You can still get a Genesis and a Sega CD combined together for maybe $50 to $70 just for the systems. And, you know, if you're going fully complete in box, maybe you're looking at $150 for the combo deal. Maybe less, actually, depending. Probably about less, maybe $100 for both complete. Yeah, so I mean, technically this version is the more accessible of the two. US Turbo Duo system is ridiculously expensive these days, and you can get a Japanese PC Engine Duo, and there's quite a few different models, but they're still pricey as well. I mean, you're looking at $150 to $200 for just a console, and then it goes up once you want to start getting complete systems with the box and manual and all that good stuff. So a lot of this stuff isn't cheap these days, as I sort of mentioned earlier on in the video. But if you want to play the Turbo Duo version, it's going to actually run you even more, so in that sense, I'd actually recommend the Sega CD version over the Duo version, just for that, if you don't already have those systems. If you do have a Duo, then I would obviously try to recommend getting that one, especially if you're more into a greater challenge. I know there's some really hardcore shmup players out there that would prefer the greater difficulty. For those that don't want the super hard difficulty, I mean, granted, you can tone the difficulty down in the Duo version as well, but this one is definitely easier in many regards, as I've mentioned already. So as you can see, guys, we are on basically the final stage now. Now what's going to happen here is I'm going to beat this level. We're going to go to a boss, and then after that it's going to take me to the shop screen again, and then we're going to fight the series of final bosses. There's actually 3 forms in the final boss, and he's actually not very difficult at all. I honestly think this boss that we fight here is a little bit more tricky. But if you do what I do on this run, where I just milk him with the sword, he dies pretty much instantly. So, maybe he's not that tricky overall. Or maybe the sword is just broken, as I mentioned earlier. So now, this level actually does get pretty tricky once we get past this section. Everything's basically going to break away. We're going to go back to a vertically scrolling segment. And then, yeah, after that, we're going to start going backwards, which is really interesting, because that's not something, again, you really saw in games, shoot-em-ups back in the day, I mean, where you can only face forward, but you're actually going backwards, and that was definitely unique. This game was just so good. Lots of creativity. I mean, just those guys walking up the stairs and things like that. It was really cool. Very unique shoot-em-up, very original for the time. I think it still is, actually. It's a great game. So now it can actually get a little tricky here, and I actually figured out a slightly better way to do this during this playthrough. Is what I would usually do is sit towards the right hand side of the screen and just get wrecked, but what I try to do is actually make my way up towards the left. See, right there, I would always do that back in the day, and it just doesn't work for the most part. So I bolted through, and I got past that last one. These guys, just use your sword. Kill them, like, right away. And you know, in reality, on this stage, the water weapon might actually be the ideal one to use, provided you don't get hit too much. The problem with the water weapon is that when your weapon power gets lowered into that yellow range, it splits back to the well, basically level 2 of its firepower range and firepower level. Sorry. And it kind of sucks, sort of, a little bit. The lightning weapon, at least you still have basically the 2 beams going straight forward, which are really, really useful. That's arguably the most useful part of it, because they're the most powerful part, it feels like, anyway. But when your water weapon lowers to its 2nd level, it's far less useful. So, like, even though I've gotten hit, I'm in the yellow range, or I was for a quick second, this weapon was still relatively useful, because it cuts through everything. It doesn't get stopped by hard objects, like I mentioned earlier. So, especially on that part with that sort of mini-boss right before this guy, it was definitely very useful. Alright, so what's going to happen with this guy is he jumps around, and he shoots bullets underneath him. And he's gonna split apart, and there's this little core in the inside. And I think I just purposely get hit on him, and I just milk him with the sword. And he's gonna do it again. A little bit harder to dodge now, because he's got those big orbs around him, but still not that difficult in this one, anyway. Oops, got hit. Sword, 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 sword. There we go. Now, you're probably like, man, you're being risky, right? You might get a game over or something. And I'm not going to buy anything at this store either. Except for some bombs, I think. Oh, no. Because what happens here is you're basically gifted full health and armor back again. So if you want to try to save your crystals, they actually add to your score. However many crystals you have are accumulated together and added to your final score. So if you're playing for score, that's actually something really good to know. And on this part, again, you get full health and armor back, which means full firepower levels. And yeah, if you want to try to play for score, you can try to play through the entire game without using your crystals. Which I actually might try to do after I do this long play and start to upload it. That'd be pretty fun. I should actually record that too. Fire weapon is great. You can, it goes in this sort of wave, and it's, if you position yourself around correctly right at the right times, you can keep moving and dodging enemies, but you can still keep hitting and attacking the enemy that you want to. So that was the first form, as this final boss. Now this big sort of orc-looking dude's gonna fall from the sky, and I've got my firepower positioned on him, so I can hit him as he comes down, just like that. And, honestly, these bosses here, I think their hit points should have been raised just a little bit. Or a lot, actually. They should have been definitely more of a challenge. And this is the final boss, and it's like this epic intro, and I think I kill him in like 10 seconds. Not even. So... And basically when he comes up, his mouth is the target. So yeah, it added up my crystals to my score. No, I'm really gonna. I think I'm gonna go back and try to beat the game without actually using my crystals and kind of see how I can do that. See if I manage it or not. So there you go, guys. Lords of Thunder on the Sega CD. We've officially finished it. And this is arguably, probably, in my opinion, one of the best ending theme songs ever. So, but yeah, not a very long ending at all. The intro is a good bit longer. I mean, we're already halfway through the ending. This is pretty much the end of it right now. And then the title, Lords of Thunder, comes up, and then that's it. Back to the title screen. Nothing special. So that's kind of a shame, but at least the ending theme, you know, makes it all worth it. Alright guys, well, yeah, again, I'm Austin. This was a long play of Lords of Thunder on the Sega CD. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Apologize if I was a little incoherent a little bit. I'm still got this cold, and man, yeah, I'm just still not feeling great. But definitely wanted to get this video up for you guys. It is a little delayed. I am a few days late, so for that I apologize. For anybody else watching that might be new to my channel, feel free to subscribe. I've got more Let's Plays on the way. I think this will probably actually be my last actual long play for a while. My last long play before this was supposed to be the last one, but you know, again, I was under the weather, and I figured last night I would just go ahead and record the footage and then just slap a commentary track on top of it. Whereas this was actually intended to originally be an actual live Let's Play. But I will be back with some more Sega CD games very soon. I've got Android Assault, I've got Sylphied, I've got basically other shooters like that. And I have some other crappy Sega CD games I want to do a different sort of series of Let's Plays on. So definitely stay tuned and watch out for those videos. So anyway guys, until next time, take care.